Scrying is sort of new in Simic, as a theme at least, but today we will see how it really makes sense. And we are starting with Arwen. Not with Elrond, which might seem weird, but this is the daughter of Elrond and the granddaughter of Celeborn and Galadriel on her mother's side. She chose Luthien's path over joining her father for the Havens, and this is very significant as Luthien's path meant that she'd marry Aragorn, uniting men and elves. With this choice, she also chose not to become immortal, which needed her to go to the Havens if she wanted to be immortal. But she chose to be human, and in this, she got the ability to scry and gave it to the people of Middle-earth. She could see the future, and she could bring a lot of people onto the right path. She'd eventually give Frodo her place on the ship for Valinor as well, which is legit because he was a ring bearer and they are meant to stay there. With the other ring bearers and almost all of the elves that would live in bliss together with all the other elves and ring bearers. We do need to make a little bit of a point before we go into the how to make a deck with Simic scrying, because Elminster is still sort of the king of scrying, but more so because his way of doing it really wins you the game almost instantly without anything else really necessary. This is because he says exile the top card of your library, create a number of 1/1 flying tokens equal to that card's mana value, enabling you to easily make 10 1/1 flying creatures. And of course, that would win you the game easily. But Green-Blue has gotten a bit more of a mixed approach of granting your elves power. So Celeborn, for example, gets +1/+1 onto end of turn for each card looked at while scrying this way, so he can become very big as well. Aragorn we should note as well, because he of course married Arwen and became the Uniter, uniting the red and white of the humans with the green and blue of the elves. And we see this as well in his blue ability to scry too. So I thought this was just funny. We should know about the elves that they rarely give advice about their scrying. Elves are known for their counsel, but in the way that they are so wise that they almost never give any counsel, or they almost never give any real answer, because they will say both no and yes, according to Frodo here. When they do give you a singular answer, or maybe they act on something, or they give you something close to advice, you'd better listen. Legolas is very much associated with the scrying too. We see 4 cards where he either is in the flavor or he has a card himself where he works with scrying. Which seems weird because he is just an archer, you might say. But it is also very logical because scrying is not always magical. It can also just be about scouting, like this lookout, or like this card where just a bunch of arrows are shot. One other way in which we see this scrying, and we see the explanation of elves being in green and blue, is the fact that the elves are called to the sea. They want to cross the sea, they want to go to the sea, because there, on the other side of it, they will become immortal. And they know that this is their faith, and therefore this is associated with scrying as well. Where, for example, this person on a boat with beautiful art from Axel Sauerwald is going to the other side of the sea, and this makes her scry as well. It's showing through how she attacks every time. And then taps a bunch of creatures from your opponent so she can attack. I want to note, oh, by the way, one big part of this story. The seas are the reason why these people are blue, and Círdan was the most clairvoyant of the elves. So this also links into the scrying, and Círdan is the one we see in this flavor, who is bringing the people the boats they need to get across to the sea. He got one of the rings as well, and we need this for the next part. onto having to surrender it to Gandalf, and this ring was called Narya, the Ring of Fire, and it would inspire others to resist domination and despair. This was why he could keep his place next to the sea, safe from the evil powers of the Middle Earth. Now Gandalf, when he got these powers of resisting domination, gave his power to the other people around him. That's why this card, Gandalf White Rider, which is after he got his ring, gives other people more power. Now also, he scries because he got that power from the elves. So I love that. Back to the Grey Havens, we see the Navigator and the Grey Havens themselves, which is really cool. We see the Grey Havens themselves and how the elves built beautiful boats. But mostly the flavors here are really important. For one, they say that the elven ships set sail from here, but they never return. And on the other part, they say that Círdan still dwells in the Grey Havens. They only say this because the humans don't really get to go there. But it seems to be true that Círdan is there because we saw him in the movies as well. Here, Arundel also went to Valinor, and he also shows this scrying ability. So I really think that they are selling the point that the elves got blue through the scrying abilities and through getting to the seas. But again, they are also sometimes scouts or like watchers like this one, which says, but there are some of us who go abroad from gathering of news and watching of enemies. This guy gets extra power and can't be blocked whenever you scry. And then there's the Galadrim guide, which I thought was funny because yes, they scry. But we see of course Legolas and Gimli in the art while they are being blindfolded because they can't know the way to Galadrim, which is how these people are safe from other people, as we will see in the powers of other rings throughout this story. We have Elrond, who bears the second ring. Elrond is the father to Arwen, who we saw before, and is a great magician himself. He seems to have healing powers, but only gives that power to people in need, as we see him doing to Frodo here. He heals others only when he is scrying, or like he knows that the people he will heal will do well in the world in his eyes. As an elf that barely ever offers advice, he also never offers, or almost never offers, action. So this healing is a great boon. Elrond wears the ring of Vilya, which gives him the power of healing. So we don't know really how much comes from Elrond and how much comes from the ring. But eventually he got this ring, and this power also gives him the power of wind and water, which I will explain later. The third ring was for a long time with Galadriel. She was the lady to Celeborn and thus also the grandmother of Arwen. And she wore, like I said, the third ring. This ring could preserve and hide from evil. This is why her forests should never be found. They wanted to stay hidden, and thus they blindfold anyone that want to get into these forests. This is the only way that Lothlorien could be held. When Frodo and Sam were allowed to see into her mirror, as we see in the second card, and a bit of Gandalf the White walking towards a mountain, she explained that they couldn't really give her the ring. They had to do this herself. She says, in place of the Dark Lord, you will set up a queen that will be loved, even though I will still dominate the others. So that is even worse than an obvious evil. Then she gave the whole party gifts, and with that 3 gifts of her hair for Gimli, which he wears proudly. No, just kidding. He has it in like a diamond that can't be broken. She gave a seed of a massive tree to Sam, an elf stone to Aragorn, which gave him the name Elisar, and then she gave Frodo a vial that would help him get through Shelob's lair. So everyone got something that saved them, but Gimli just got hairs, and I don't think really he did anything with that. The power of Elrond to use elements is also seen in the horses of the Brunnen, which is a river, where the horses, well, the water sort of killed the horses of the Nazgul, and rob them of their ability to stay in this realm of being. So they stopped the Nazgul for a pretty long while, allowing the Fellowship of the Ring safer passage. It is only implied that this was the power of Elrond, but I am pretty sure. Now, for some other cards, there are 3 sort of ways in which you can get scrying. So one is just you get 1 time of scrying, and these cards are really cheap and they are often in blue. Usually you will only pay 1 mana to get to the scrying. Another part is lands, but of course in 2 colors you can only use the temple cards like Temple of Mystery. And then there is the continuous scrying like Lifecrafter's Bestiary, which is a Pokédex where I only today noticed that they are aiming this lens at one of the animals to get this holographic result, which is cool. And like Aqua's form, Aqua form, let's call it that, which is really good here because you want to grow your elves with the scrying, and the fact that they can't be blocked is really necessary here. Also, it scries for you. Other thing I wanted to note is that elves aren't new to scrying or being in blue, because Nissa has been there for a pretty long time as well, or at least she had access to the color in one set. So this isn't new, this isn't strange, it's just a move. I look forward to seeing what you will build with this simic scrying, or if you can find a way to add the white color to it. Let me know, and have a great day.